Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the English Listening Podcast. I am really happy to have you here today, and I hope you are ready for a topic that may sound simple at first, but actually has a huge influence on our lives. Today, we are going to talk about responsibility. When you hear the word responsibility, you might think about work, school, bills, or things you simply have to do. But responsibility is much bigger than completing tasks. It is also about understanding that your choices have consequences, taking care of what depends on you, and being willing to admit when you make a mistake. Responsibility does not mean that you have to control everything or that every problem is your fault. Life is full of things we cannot control, and sometimes difficult situations happen even when we do everything right. Being responsible means knowing the difference between what you can control and what you cannot. It means focusing your energy on your actions, your decisions, and the way you respond to situations. I think this is one of the most useful ideas because it can change the way we look at everyday life. Instead of always asking, "Who is to blame?" we can sometimes ask, "What can I do now?" That small change in thinking can make us more independent and mature. Responsibility grows slowly. We learn it as children when we take care of our things, finish our homework, or keep a promise. As we grow older, our responsibilities become more complicated, but the basic idea stays the same. We learn to take care of ourselves and the things that matter to us. One important part of responsibility is keeping your promises. A promise does not have to be something dramatic or extremely serious. It can be as simple as telling a friend that you will call them, telling yourself that you will study for an hour, or agreeing to finish a task by a certain time. When we make promises and consistently keep them, people learn that they can trust us. More importantly, we begin to trust ourselves. If you constantly tell yourself that you will do something and then never do it, it becomes harder to believe in your own words. This is why responsibility is closely connected to self-discipline. You do not need to feel motivated every day to do what you said you would do. Sometimes you simply need to remember why you made that commitment. Of course, there will be moments when you cannot keep a promise. You may become sick, face an unexpected problem, or realize that you made an unrealistic commitment. Being responsible does not mean pretending everything is fine. It means communicating honestly, explaining the situation, and doing your best to find another solution. For example, if you cannot finish something on time, it is much better to say so than to disappear and leave other people waiting. This kind of honesty shows maturity. Responsibility also means being responsible with your time. Every day, we have a limited amount of time, and how we use it affects what we can accomplish. You do not have to plan every minute of your life, but it helps to notice where your time is going. If you spend hours scrolling and then say you have no time for your goals, it may be worth changing your habits. Small decisions repeated every day can create very different results over time. Another important part of responsibility is taking responsibility for your mistakes. Nobody gets everything right, and pretending that you never make mistakes will not make you a better person. In fact, mistakes can teach us a lot when we are willing to look at them honestly. Imagine that you forget an important deadline because you did not organize your time well. You could blame your teacher, your friends, or simply say that you were unlucky. But if you recognize that poor planning played a role, you can learn something useful. You can start using reminders, prepare earlier, or divide large tasks into smaller steps. That is the difference between guilt and responsibility. Guilt can make you feel terrible about what happened, while responsibility asks you to understand what happened and decide what you can do differently next time. Taking responsibility also includes apologizing when your actions hurt someone. A sincere apology is more than saying, "I am sorry." It means recognizing what you did, understanding how it affected the other person, and trying to make things better when possible. Sometimes we apologize because we simply want the uncomfortable moment to end, but a real apology should come from a willingness to change. At the same time, responsibility does not mean accepting blame for things you did not do. You can take responsibility for your behavior without taking responsibility for another person's feelings, choices, or actions. This is an important boundary. Healthy responsibility gives you control over your part of a situation, not control over everyone around you. When you learn to separate your responsibilities from other people's responsibilities, relationships can become healthier and less stressful. Responsibility is also important in relationships because trust is built through actions, not only through words. Whether it is a friendship, a family relationship, a romantic relationship, or a professional connection, people usually feel safer when they know they can depend on each other. Being responsible in a relationship can mean listening when someone needs you, respecting boundaries, being honest, and doing what you said you would do. It can also mean recognizing when you have made a mistake instead of becoming defensive immediately. None of this means that you have to be available all the time or solve every problem for someone else. In fact, responsibility includes knowing your limits. If you always say yes because you're afraid of disappointing people, you may eventually become exhausted and frustrated. Sometimes the responsible choice is to say, "I cannot do that right now," or "I need some time." Clear communication can prevent many misunderstandings. Responsibility also matters in school and at work. A responsible student does not need to be perfect, but they make an effort to attend, learn, meet deadlines, and ask for help when necessary. A responsible worker understands that their actions can affect an entire team. If one person constantly arrives late or ignores important tasks, other people may have to carry the extra work. On the other hand, someone who communicates, follows through, and accepts feedback can become a person others trust. These habits may seem small, but they can have a major effect on future opportunities. People often remember who was reliable when things became difficult. So responsibility is not just about avoiding problems. It is also a way of building a reputation based on trust, honesty, and consistency. There is another side of responsibility that we should talk about, and that is taking responsibility for ourselves. We often think about responsibility in relation to other people, but we also have a responsibility to care for our own lives. This can include taking care of our health, managing our money, protecting our time, developing useful skills, and making decisions that support our future. Of course, everyone has different circumstances, so there is no single perfect way to do this. But we can usually find small areas where we have some control. For example, if you know that you need to study, you can choose a time to begin instead of waiting for the perfect mood. If you want to improve your finances, you can start by understanding where your money goes. If you want to feel healthier, you can make one small change to your daily routine. Responsibility becomes much easier when we stop thinking that everything has to change at once. You do not need to become a completely different person tomorrow. You can simply make one responsible choice today and then another one tomorrow. It is also important to remember that asking for help can be a responsible decision. Some people believe that being responsible means handling everything alone, but that is not true. If you are facing something you cannot manage by yourself, asking someone you trust for advice or support can be a sign of maturity. We all need other people sometimes. Responsibility is not about proving that you never need anyone. It is about being honest about what you can handle and taking the right action when you need support. Taking care of yourself is not selfish. It is part of becoming someone who can handle life's challenges with greater awareness and confidence. Sometimes responsibility can feel uncomfortable because it forces us to stop making excuses. Excuses can be easy and comforting because they protect us from admitting that we could have made a better choice. But when we always blame circumstances, we also give away some of our power to change them. This does not mean that circumstances do not matter. They absolutely do. People have different opportunities, challenges, resources, and experiences, and we should never ignore those differences. Responsibility simply means asking, given my situation, what is the next useful thing I can do? Maybe you cannot change what happened yesterday, but you can decide what you will do today. Maybe you cannot control another person's behavior, but you can control whether you communicate clearly or walk away from an unhealthy situation. Maybe you cannot guarantee success, but you can prepare, practice, and keep learning. This way of thinking can make life feel more manageable. It also helps us become more patient with ourselves. Responsible people are not people who never fail. They're people who are willing to learn from failure. They understand that progress is often messy. Sometimes you will make a good decision, and sometimes you will make a bad one. What matters is what you do after you recognize it. If you make a mistake, pause, learn, repair what you can, and continue. You do not have to spend your entire life punishing yourself for one wrong decision. Responsibility should help you grow, not keep you trapped in the past. The goal is not perfection. The goal is becoming someone who can look honestly at their choices and say, I will do my best to handle this. That attitude can change the way you face challenges and the way you see yourself. As we come to the end of today's episode, I want you to remember that responsibility is not a punishment, and it is not a demand to be perfect. It is a form of personal power. When you take responsibility for your choices, you become more aware of what you can change and more prepared to act instead of simply waiting for life to happen. You can start with very simple things. Keep one promise you made to yourself. Finish a task you have been avoiding. Apologize when you know you are wrong. Organize your time a little better. Take care of your health. Be honest when you need help. Think before making an important decision. These actions may not look impressive from the outside, but they build character over time. I also want you to remember that responsibility and kindness can exist together. You can hold yourself accountable without being cruel to yourself. You can admit a mistake without believing that you are a bad person. You can learn from the past while still giving yourself permission to move forward. And you can be responsible for your own actions without trying to control everyone else's life. If there is one idea I hope you take from this episode, it is this. You may not control everything that happens to you, but you can often choose how you respond. That choice matters. Thank you so much for spending this time with me and for continuing to learn English with Sally Lessons. I hope this episode gave you something useful to think about and maybe even one small action you can practice today. Keep learning, keep growing, and remember that every responsible choice is a step toward the person you want to become. See you in the next episode.